Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Excited to spend some time with you. I know we've got some folks that are clients that are on the board that are joining us. So thank you for showing up. If you're a client, we've got some friends, some folks that we've been having some great conversations with, and hopefully some new people that we haven't met before. It's great to get a chance to spend some time with you. My name is Andrew Reid. I am the co-CEO of the Rival Group. I'm joined with my sister, Jennifer, who also is our chief methodologist and my co-CEO at the Rival Group. I was making a joke that it's like instead of between two ferns with Zach Galifianakis, it's between two Reids, and you've got Francesca. So Jennifer has been a methodologist for over 2 decades, and has been a really fantastic partner of mine and someone who's really deeply understands what we're going to talk about today. We thought that if we're going to talk about Gen Z and we're going to talk about authenticity, it'd be really important to bring in someone who is a rock star from our team that is a Gen Z. It's one thing for a couple 40-year-olds or people in their 40s to tell you about this demographic. It's better if we can have someone that actually is in this demographic. So Francesca, thank you very much for joining us today.
I'm stoked to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So for context, Jennifer and I are in Vancouver and Francesca is in Chicago. So Jen, I'm going to pass over to you and let you get things going, and we'll get into it.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Andrew. So just to sort of kick us off here, we're going to talk today about sort of how we engage with Gen Zs in research and some of the lessons that we've learned specifically over the last 4 or 5 years, working with a wide variety of clients and their younger customers, their younger consumers, their younger target. And really, at the heart of why this is important to talk about is that we found that Gen Zs are very keen to do research. They want to share their opinions, they want to connect with brands, but it does require us to play by their rules. And I just thought I'd start with this really quick little sort of story around, if you go into TikTok or other kinds of social media, one of the trends that we're seeing is that when brands are doing things right, there's this sort of natural swell of influence that goes on, where Gen Zs really lean into particular brands that are sort of speaking in the way that they, want to be heard, that they're, that they are, delivering on the right tone and promise to Gen Zs. But the opposite is also true. We also see this sort of trend of de-influencing. When you sort of piss this generation off, they are not afraid to go out and talk about it. And this ability to sort of harness both, in all honesty, both the positive and the negative, and this desire to share opinions is a real great opportunity for brands. And then the notion of being able to form authentic relationships with younger consumers helps us to not get into those mistakes that can result in this sort of swell of de-influencing that goes on. I'm going to just give one quick, for those of you that are new here that maybe don't know much about Rival, this is my only slide that feels at all like a salesy slide, but I do want to sort of start by talking about who Rival is, and then we'll just jump into the content from here. At Rival, we have sort of 3 core brand promises. The first is that we build communities with our members in mind. The respondent experience is at the heart of everything that we do, and that respondent experience stretches across multiple generations. But we find that when we lean into Gen Zs, it works particularly well. We really want to bring to the table a combination of quant and qual capabilities and be able to sort of do that in one sitting. So that's both sophisticated tooling in terms of what our surveys can do, and sort of video out of the box, and this opportunity to have these sort of more in-depth conversations with people as they go. And the third pillar of our offer is the idea of strategic support and partnership. We never want to just hand software over and wipe our hands and say, okay, this is your problem to figure out now. We have a wide variety of services available, everything from support for people who do want to do it themselves, sort of a middling support for people who want to know what kind of questions they want to ask and manage their own data, but they want some help in the middle, all the way through to the research consultancy that we have that's called Reach3, and Francesca comes to us from Reach3, that are really in there leaning in to give sort of full service support. On the bottom right corner there, you can see a QR code that you can grab with your phone, which of course we all have, and is at the heart of what we're going to talk about in a minute. And you can kind of get a sense of what our studies feel like. There is a video right at the beginning of that chat that really helps you to sort of understand how we sort of create some of these engagement pieces with another one of our sort of Gen Z rock stars, sort of giving the voiceover of that video. You can either sort of quickly have a listen to that right now, or just grab the QR code and we can pick it back up again at the end. So here we go. So these are that being said, these are the sort of 3 principles that I want to unpack with you today. And Francesca's going to jump in and give us some voiceover, sort of talk about some of her own experiences as we go through. And the 3 principles of engaging with Gen Zs really are engaging them where they are, building trust and transparency, and creating a conversation. These are the 3 things that are the sort of cornerstones of the approach that we take, and the approach that really you should be taking if you are trying to connect with Gen Zs. The first one is engaging people where they are. So where are they? Well, they're on their mobile devices. According to the Pew Research Center, 100% of 18 to 29-year-olds in the US own a cell phone. When we look at that globally, we see that this is, I don't know if it's still 100% globally, but this is absolutely the #1 device that most of us are using, but that Gen Zs are using specifically. Even more so than that, it's not just about being on mobile. That's not enough. It's this combination of having studies that are designed for the mobile experience. That's where you're connecting with people, but also using the SMS channel as the means to reach out to them. So we can see that the majority of Gen Zs are sort of almost always or most of the time using SMS and text messaging to sort of connect with their friends, with their family. It is the channel that they use most often. I don't know if you've ever tried to send an email to a Gen Z. If I have to email, I am the mother of two Gen Zs. I have a 19-year-old and a 21-year-old sons. If I have to send them an email, I always have to text them to tell them to open their email. And so in a research industry that's really based today a lot in email deployment, it's one of the reasons why we are sort of struggling, or people are struggling across the board to connect with Gen Zs.
Jen, I'd even add just that I think it's not even in research. It's interesting, even just with your consumer hat on, to watch this shift slowly happening from email marketing towards, I'm getting more text notifications on my phone when you're checking in for a flight, and you're doing anything these days. And so, I think it's a trend that is really happening globally, not just in research. Absolutely.
So, mobile and SMS together are the way to engage with Gen Zs. This is actually a sort of global look across about 20 of the communities. We did this analysis last year. This is a global look across about 20 communities that we have, and the question to sort of, how do you like this chat format compared to other online surveys? And while, regardless of what generation you are, we find that people like it a lot better or a little better, you can see that that's really even more so in Gen Zs. And Francesca is going to give us a little bit of insight as to why she thinks that is.
Thank you. So I definitely love this visual. And I think for some additional context, it's important to know that a lot of people from the outside looking in, they're going to see Gen Z as this group of people who are obsessed with technology and convenience. And it's usually been written off as laziness, but something that I think my generation is actually particularly mindful of is accessibility. So if something is difficult to access or participate in, that's a major turnoff. Like, for example, if I can only take a survey when I'm sitting down, laptop in hand, and I'm at a place that has Wi-Fi, that's more intensive than just being able to take something somewhere on my phone. So there's that different level of accessibility there. And if something is going to require more work on our part just to open a survey link, it doesn't bode well. Alternatively, though, having an SMS invite with the URL attached, there's no legwork needed for me, and it's easier to just jump right in.
Perfect. Absolutely. And then you can sort of jump into think about all those times where you pick up your phone in between the micro moments that you have in your day. You've hopped in the back of an Uber, or you're waiting for the pasta water to boil. Those are all the moments that we can jump into to get people to give us insight, to do surveys or chats with us when we don't have that weight of portals or apps to download. I'm sure the last thing you want to do, Francesca, is sort of download another app onto your phone.
They're not going to do it. Yeah.
No. So, but going mobile isn't really just about being mobile friendly. So we talked about the SMS channel being really important, how those SMS notifications really increase our completion rates because it's this much more immediate channel. We're going to talk in the second section about sort of trust and transparency and authenticity and why those things are important. I will mention here that one of the things that we found is really important is that idea of trust, that SMS is starting to become a channel where we can get a little bit spammed, where we're not sure, like, what is this link? One of the things that we do is when you join one of our communities, we send out a contact card that comes from that community so that you can actually just save in your mobile device, just like you would save your friend's contact card. And it means that forevermore, when you're getting a text message from us, it's actually coming from that particular community or from that particular brand. And I think that trust among Gen Zs is more important almost than in any other channel.
I also just add that I think the one thing no one turns off when it comes to notifications is SMS.
Right.
You know, sometimes you have that app that's annoying, and you have other things you may throttle up and down, but I think we're finding that that's really driving this really great response is that, and with the contact card, so it's not some rando number. It's okay, it's a brand that I know, I care about, and okay, I know this is going to be a great experience.
Exactly. Okay, so I think the other thing that mobile opens up for us is a multi-channel approach to recruitment. And I don't have enough time right now to sort of unpack every single different kind of recruitment. And there are some webinars that we've done around, that really do talk about the pros and cons of each of these sources. But roughly, I think of recruitment as falling into these three sort of main buckets. When I work with a client, I'll start with what are your internal sources? Do you have email databases? That is certainly, a place that we can go to start. With Gen Z, there's also organic social. So how can we actually harness the people who are already engaged with you in your socials? And that could be anything from Instagram, Snapchat, Pinterest. I'm going to show an example a little bit later on recruiting on TikTok, which can be a little bit challenging. So it really depends on what your fan base is. Recruiting on Discord, I'm going to show an example of that as well. So sort of looking at what your social channels are really becomes a very viable way to recruit and connect with Gen Zs. And then sort of the notion of being able to API in so that as someone's going through their natural experience, they bought something on your online retail site and the opportunity to have Andrew, are you changing my slides?
Nope, that's you.
No, that was not me. Interesting.
You got a ghost in your computer. I was just going to add, actually, while you're talking about APIs, we have a customer that has a Salesforce database. They have customer phone numbers from a purchase that they made. And when a flag gets hit in the database, they ship us the phone number of that person, the name of that person, some information about what they actually purchased and the transaction they made. Now we have this really personal experience happening. So it's not just like a standard generic, it's very targeted and it feels very personalized to that individual. And we see great conversion from that. So I think the API side, I can't overstate enough of being something that's really emerging, especially with brands that do have that richness of data and customer data.
Yeah, well, and I think it allows you to do that recruitment in an organic way that is sort of part of the natural stream of the sort of customer's journey as they're going through. I don't know what's going on with my slides. They're jumping back and forth and my hands are up here. So please excuse the little bit of slide flipping. The second bucket is really around intercepts. There was a day when we wanted to do intercept work. I'm old enough to remember, going to the mall with a clipboard and trying to intercept people at the mall to do surveys. Wow. But now we can actually do a lot of different things. Everybody knows how to use a QR code now. It's one of the pandemic gave us, I think, in research, a few gifts. One of them being that there's a ghost in my machine that really wants to be on that slide. So QR codes work really well. I'm going to show a case study on that in 1 second. But also the opportunity there definitely are brands that have apps that consumers use all the time. So the opportunity for that intercept to be app enabled, for it to be web enabled. And then the question I always get when I'm talking about recruitment, people say, Jennifer, that's all very well and good, but if I don't have internal sources and intercepts don't really work for me, what else might I do? And this sort of this mobile friendly approach, which is ultimately just a mobile web page, allows us to really expand what we can do with external sources. So that's some of the traditional river recruiting, but also the ability to lean into paid social and influencers. I'm going to show some examples of that in 1 second.
We've had some great experiences on the influencer side, and I think that's going to continue. So
social media, if we talk about social media and why this works really well, it's a great way. So I'm going to start by thinking about social media in terms of the access, the people that we already have that are connecting to us as brands through social media. It is a great thing to tap into, but you have to be conscious of the relationship between like what somebody was doing and the invite to join a community or do a piece of research. So if I'm it's not even because we're talking about Gen Zs right now, but if Francesca is, scrolling social media and she goes from, she's watching reels or she's, doing whatever it is that she's doing, having a laugh, and then all of a sudden gets, this invitation from a brand to join.
And maybe Jennifer,
know.
Try turning your sharing off and then turning it back on again.
Excuse me, everyone.
And otherwise, I have this ready to go. If it does it again, then I'm just going to.
No idea why that's jumping back and forth.
I'm going to drive for you.
Okay. Bum, bum, bum. All right, we'll see if that. Nope, Andrew, I'm going to let you drive because I do not know what's going on here.
Okay, that's great. Well, I will just.
But while you do that, I will keep talking.
Great. You want to just let me share that, Jennifer?
I sure do. Go, Vanna, go. I knew my little brother would be helpful for something.
Let's not get into that.
All right. Thanks, Andrew. We were slide 10.
Yeah. Okay. Present.
So my eldest Gen Z just came down the stairs and he brought me my mouse from upstairs. So I just solved why my deck was moving back.
Because your son was doing that. That's always good. Okay.
Okay. So social media is a great way to sort of tap in. Francesca, I know that you've got some comments about sort of why we think social media is a really appropriate way to Gen Zs.
For sure. So in our communities, the social recruits are consistently the most engaged that we have, because when we think about it, their interest and appreciation of the topic at hand is organic, right? So it was there before we found them. They already have this wealth of opinions and knowledge and information, and it shows when they converse with us. I cannot tell you how many times I'll, get a survey back, and so many of our insanely long open ends or video selfie responses are these social recruit people just going off, right? Because they're writing these like almost fully formed think piece-esque pieces, and it's so detailed in their explanation. It feels like they're giving me an essay, but they're doing that and they're giving me so much because it's something that authentically they were invested in.
Totally. And I'm just going to add one quick client story I got the other day, which is for the folks that are on the phone that you've got social teams. We are finding that this is actually a great way to help validate some of the work that the social teams do. Sometimes it is hard. You get a lot of vanity metrics of how many shares you get and the size of your followings and the size of your social communities. When you start leveraging a social community, then you're tapping that to recruit even some of your own assets. It really does help to sort of validate you've got this machine, and when we want to, we can use this to help drive people into research and to help do some things that usually have some very big hard costs associated with them. So it's one of these, I think in the early days, it was kind of difficult to engage social teams. It's becoming easier and easier now.
Perfect. All right.
I'm guessing you want to move forward here.
Yeah, I want to move forward. And so I think this is one of my favorite examples of how, we can use social media specifically in a Gen Z setting. This is a recruit that we did for the Seattle Surge. They're an esports company. So imagine, who's following, esports is that those sort of young, more predominantly more male than female, though a combination of the two. I think this is a great example of how you.
I could win a free hoodie just by joining the Surge Wave. Come on, man. You know I never lie to you. Check this out. So all you gotta do is open up the Surge TikTok, click the link in the bio, answer a few easy questions, give them some feedback, finish it up, and then bam. Look at those hoodies. Oh my God, I can't decide. That gray one is so nice, but what the hell are you doing in my garage? This isn't your house? We pulled up in this car. Am I still gonna get a hoodie? Click the link in bio. I gotta go. You mother.
So I love that because I think it really is consistent with the tone that esports company is going for. I mean, obviously, if you're a financial institution and you're trying to recruit Gen Zs, you're not going to have a TikTok ad that's quite that irreverent. But this idea that you can really pay attention with social media, we can be really targeted and pay attention to the correct tone, and that causes people to lean in and want to join the conversation that you're trying to start. Next one, Andrew. I believe that these are some examples from American Student Assistance. I believe Abby from ASA has joined us today, which is awesome. If you're there, hi, Abby. We can really get targeted with social ads. So now I'm actually talking about the moving from being able to harness who is already connected with you in your own social to talking about how we can actually recruit Gen Zs from outside. I mean, oftentimes the challenge that brands have is they want to understand Gen Zs. They're failing to really make those connections, and they want to use the research to understand. So they don't necessarily have the ready to go group of people. And this is how we can actually now use sort of paid social, where we're creating custom advertising to recruit people into research. We've been working with ASA, I believe, for 4 years now, and we've recruited a community for them that is sort of middle and high school students. So in many ways, that has traditionally been one of the more difficult groups. Actually, honestly, I mean, I've been around this block a few times. The millennials were hard when they were this old to recruit. Gen Zs are hard to recruit in this place. But if you really get your social media right, you really can find these folks and be able to have these really great conversations with them. And to Francesca's point earlier, when you do it correctly, the quality of feedback that you get from people that you've recruited on social is really great. This last one, and then I'm going to move on to sort of pillar number 2, is this example from Revolt TV. So Revolt TV is Revolt is a P. Diddy's hip hop marketing company. It's very much connected to the hip hop community. And Lindsay Ribbling, who's our client there, really does a great job of this sort of mixed, Andrew, just don't play that for 1 second because it's super loud. This mixed notion of recruiting in different streams. So she's doing intercepts during her Revolt Summit every year. And she's made it really cool. So it has this sort of cachet, excuse me, and this ability to join. You can see they're doing some intercepts with QR codes, and then an insights lab that you can go into where you can actually go in and join the community and answer the surveys. They're also doing recruitment, right? This is right on Diddy's socials. This example is going to show you a few different stories, and then it's going to come into where the recruitment happens and show how easy it is to just sort of swipe up and answer some questions to join. Go for it.
This is from a live story. So we've sped up the story slightly so that we can quickly get to the recruit experience.
It's not thinking big deal, gonna have to.
And then it's quiet. It's loud and then it's quiet, this particular. So it's just a swipe up, and it's that staying in context that we think is really important when we're recruiting Gen Zs. This idea that it now actually feels like a conversation. It didn't kind of go thunk and take you to sort of a traditional survey that makes you feel studied. Instead, it's sort of the opening of a conversation. And that's the piece that where we're really seeing a lot of success in recruitment of Gen Zs.
And this ability to really fire a web browser inside of any app. So social, doesn't matter, all the social apps all have the ability to do this. You have to have, I think it's 20,000 followers to be able to have swipe up stories work right now. So you have to have a decent amount of sort of fandom or followers. But it's very effective. And the nice thing is you close this and you're still sitting in Instagram. So we haven't taken you away from that experience in a significant way. We just, given you something and the goal here is to make this feel as frictionless as possible.
Yeah, and Victoria asked a question about sort of how do we filter out bots. In 1 second here, we're going to talk, or I think actually in the third pillar, we're going to talk about sort of how you open conversations, how you ask questions. And there's a lot of really great tricks about how you can ask questions that bots are just not capable of answering. It gives us this ability to filter them out when they come in. I mean, and that's true of any source. You always have to be vigilant on the question of finding legitimate people. I would say we get there's always a certain amount of bot activity. We're seeing it with some chat, people answering with chat GTP, and how you phrase some of your opening questions really is the antidote, the main antidote to that. Okay, I want to talk this section of our deck has the fewest number of slides, but I think is the most important point, which is this notion of trust and transparency. And those of you who have listened to me give a webinar before have heard this story, but I will tell it again. I think we have to be really conscious with Gen Zs that this is a generation that grew up with certainly their smartphones. They grew up with social media, maybe not in the exact form that it's in now, but certainly in the early forms of social media. And we actively taught them. I mean, again, I'm a parent of this generation. We actively taught them at home, at school, in the media, not to give their personal information to strangers on the internet. And we are essentially strangers on the internet trying to get their personal information. And I think that that's something that we don't acknowledge often enough in the research industry. And it is even extra important when you're trying to connect with Gen Zs. And so building trust and transparency is of paramount importance. You want to give me the next slide there, Andrew? So I think that if we see sort of transparency leads to trust. So, and I'm going to show you actually 3 different video examples from some of our clients to really help underline the point of how this can happen. I will say, this is a generation that loves short form video. They like, too long did not read. They like to see video. We use, as much as we love to collect video, open-ended response, to hear people's, talk about things in their own voice. We have really encouraged more and more our clients to use video as the main engagement piece, because it is a face and it does sort of lend to that idea of transparency, and there really being somebody on the other end of these things. And so we talk about sharing mission. We talk about how you can actually share the impact of what that feedback has been, and closing loops on incentives. And I'm going to give Francesca Andrew, the floor here for 1 moment to talk about why she really believes this to be important.
Thank you. So I definitely think, we all know that communication and consistency are essential because it solidifies that trust, it builds rapport, and being consistent with communication, through regular scheduling and smart deployment, clear opening language about what to expect. All of those things really strengthen our relationship within our communities, especially, closing the loop for things like incentives. So I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Gen Z, we're bag chasers. Like, we are about it. And when it comes to incentives, my generation is so big on, money is such an important thing, right? And there's a lot of people and they care about it deeply. So they need to know things like, how am I going to get my compensation? Is it going to be through an SMS link? Am I getting it through email? Is it going to happen through Cash App? Who's going to be sending it? I need to know the exact name. How long do I need to wait after completion to get it? So there's a lot of information that needs to be prepared up front and given to them in a consistent way for us to have that kind of relationship.
Yeah, it's both motivating, but it can be then dismotivating when it doesn't feel real, when it feels scammy. I've had my own kids test studies for me sometimes, and when they see the incentive piece of it, they look at me and say, well, is this incentive real? And I'm like, of course this incentive is real. And that helps to kind of underline this idea that you really do have to make it feel real. We use incentives because they're incentivizing, but you have to kind of lean into them to make them work. So Andrew's going to, next slide, neither of these videos play, the next videos play. So the first one, Yep, go ahead.
The one point I just wanted to make really quickly was just that, I think the industry is falling in love with video, which is fantastic. And it seems to be, the more people I talk to, it's just really all about like, well, how much do you have to charge to get someone to do a video versus this idea of, can I use video? Can I walk the walk and talk the talk versus saying, I'll just pay $5 to get people or X dollars to get people to upload a video. So, I mean, for us, I think it's something that we think that, we want to, avoid and create a culture where you're getting videos because people genuinely want to share with you that way, not because it's really just this extra $2 I'm getting. So, okay, sorry, back to you, Jennifer.
No, of course, using videos to get videos. So this first one is an example of how our Paramount client welcomes people into their Gen Z community.
Oh, hello there. Hi, I'm David from Viacom CBS, home to flagship brands you know and love, like MTV, VH1, Comedy Central, Nickelodeon, and CBS. Welcome to Culture Keepers. It's a community of 14 to 40-year-olds who are engaged in everything about culture. So if you're talking about it with your friends and family, you better bet we want to talk about it with you too. So it could be anything like a Netflix show you've been binging, or is it a new food you've been trying? Or perhaps it's a more meaty topic, pun intended, like the.
And then the second one is an example from Human Nation, which is the clothing line that Russell and Sierra Wilson own. And so for that community, we had actually kept who the celebrity sponsors were of the brand quiet for quite some time, because we were actually using the community in order to sort of help develop the brand. And so we sort of led them up to the members up to the sort of big reveal. And here's the big reveal of Russell and Sierra thanking their community.
What's up, community?
What's up, guys? It's Russ and C here.
Listen, we're fired up just to be a part of this with you all. For you guys to partner up with this and be able to launch this and create this with you guys. This is special. We're fired up.
Yeah, your input was amazing. It's really cool to see the things that you guys liked and gravitated towards. And it was very helpful in the process of us building out the brand for starters. So we want to thank you guys
I'll get you to stop it.
They say fired up 5 more times, I think.
Yeah. Russell's always fired up.
We've seen like great examples, even of just a product manager, a brand manager, not a celebrity, but someone who actually takes this data and is making decisions based off of it. People really love to see that. Thank you.
Well, you just introduced yourself. So if you go to the next slide, here's an example of Bunty and Elena from Allbirds sort of giving a quarterly share back on what they've been up to with the results that they've gotten from the community and things that have helped them.
Hey there, I'm Bunty. And I'm Elena, and we are just two of the many faces at Allbirds that are so grateful to be learning from you every time we chat.
Here's a couple of our teammates on the product and brand side that want to say thank you alongside us.
Your thoughts and ideas are directly impacting these teams' work, and we read everything that you submit. We're really appreciative of all the time you take to share your ideas.
This year, we asked you about sustainability, your relationship with nature, what you think about style, what you think about our new products, and way more. And for all of your efforts, many of you have won Allbirds gift cards along the way. Let's take a look at some people who won this year.
Congrats.
And with that, we want to say thanks again, and we look forward to chatting in the new year.
Perfect. All right, let's move on to pillar number 3. And that is making it an ongoing conversation. I mean, I think that people at the end of the day don't want to be studied. I think it makes us feel kind of uncomfortable and not sure about sort of where is that data going. And so one of the things within the Rival group, both on the tech side and on the consulting side, that we have really leaned hard into is this idea of a conversation. You might have heard me use the word chat. I use the word chat interchangeably with survey or questionnaire. To me, a chat is a sort of one piece of an ongoing conversation that you're having. And when you can make something an authentic, ongoing conversation, that's where insights really do come to life. That's where you really are getting thoughtful, iterative thinking about the problems that brands have every day, about the questions that they want this particular generation to ask. Next slide, Andrew. I think that I've done actually some speaking recently at a bunch of conferences in person, which has been pretty fun. And one of the things that I think I've been getting a lot of people leaning in on is this idea of the opening questions. If I could change one thing in all of your hearts and minds today, especially when you're talking to Gen Zs, but truthfully, when you're talking to anyone, is the most important thing, the most important part of your survey are the first 3 questions. When we look at where people bail out of surveys, it is at the beginning. Once you get someone going, I mean, unless it's overly long, then they might bail out at the too long mark. And somebody's now going to ask me what I think is too long. And we'll answer that in 1 minute. But what happens in those first 3 questions are so important. And it's not a demo question. It comes back to, you would not meet someone in real life and launch into asking them how old they are and where they live and, you know, what the PIN number of their credit card was. Not that we asked that in research anyway, but thinking about how you ask those first 2 or 3 questions as actually an engagement mechanism to get people kind of warmed up into your survey. Francesca, you want to just make that comment? We were talking about this yesterday about.
Yeah, love all of these, but my favorite one, it's not on here, but I like to put in my QREs, is what 3 words describe how you fill in the blank. But that's one of my favorite openers because immediately it gets people in the mind frame of, one, I'm talking about myself, and who doesn't, want to talk about themselves. But then again, that it's like conversational and we care about what they're saying.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't matter if that first question or 2 are really part of your research brief. I think we get like really focused on, this is the information I need for the survey. And I'm going to just dive right into making sure that I'm getting all of my questions asked. And we forget about the fact that it is actually an engagement. We're competing with all of the different things that somebody could be doing on their phone during the micro moments they have in their day. They could be watching a video, they could be scrolling social, they could be chatting with their friends. They could be doing research. And so making that experience something that is interesting to them is extremely important. Andrew, next slide. And then it's more when we're talking about community recruitment and Gen Zs particularly, I always like to think about it as being more than just that single engagement. That recruit chat stays really short and friendly and reasonably brief. But then how you sort of tailor that experience at first is really important. And so being able to time your next 2 chats. Often when I'm doing a new community with the client, we'll actually write 3 chats right off the hop. A recruit chat, a welcome chat, which generally has that slightly longer video in it. And the example that you saw in that QR code, and don't worry, I'm going to put it up one more time at the end, is an example of a welcome chat. And then sort of what that first chat might be. When we're doing social recruitment, social is not like buying up sample from a vendor. You buy up sample from a vendor, you say, I want 1,000 people roll in whatever the time frame is, a week, 10 days. When we're doing social recruitment, it takes a little bit longer. It takes a while to train our ads to sort of be as effective as possible. So it may take 6 weeks to really get momentum going, but you don't want the first people that you've recruited to languish for that period of time. And so the ability to use we use what we call smart distributions, and this opportunity to sort of say, like as Andrew, as soon as you get recruited, 72 hours later, you get the welcome chat. 1 week later, you get chat 1. Francesca joins 3 days later, and her journey starts from the time that she joins without really having to touch it. I love it when technology can give us best practices without us having to do a lot more effort. I think in the industry, one of the reasons why we don't live up to our best practices that we talk about a lot is because they are labor intensive. And so being able to actually have tech that looks after that for us really gives us this opportunity to do what is the best thing.
And I think at the same time, we're also, the whole goal with this is the mirror chat culture. Chat culture is all about leave, return, leave, return. I mean, what an amazing thing for market researchers, for insights professionals to leverage is the same pattern of, you want, I mean, some people may look at this and be like, well, that's a lot you're making people do right off the bat. Well, no, you want to get them into that mindset and kind of warm them up. So well said, Jennifer.
All right, next slide. Okay, so the first thing is sort of keeping it fresh and interesting. One of the activities that we actually have on the go right this very moment is we are working on a stable of questionnaires, of engagement questionnaires. And what I love about summertime is the opportunity to bring, a handful of really smart university students in for the summer. I have a really fabulous intern who is at the moment actually just writing. She herself is a Gen Z, she's 21, and she's actually writing for me right now about 20 different topical chats that my clients are going to be able to use for the rest of the year. And this idea that I sometimes think about the research that you do with a group, a community, as being profile. So you're building out the profile of the person. You're doing work. That's the questions that you need to ask in order to make the decisions that you're trying to make within your companies and organizations. And then there's a certain element of fun. And so if you have a library of chats, even if you are a snack food brand and you're mostly talking about sort of how you're snacking and you're testing new products, it doesn't hurt to sort of throw in something that asks about, what's hot in your music preferences right now. That keeps it sort of engaging and interesting. So having that stable of topics is important. I know, Francesca, this is something that you do with your clients as well.
Definitely. And to your point earlier, I do think that Gen Z, we want relevancy in our conversations, and we want to know that we're receiving something that's topical, it's current, or, socially important. But at the same time, it can't feel like we're just reading a news article and clicking buttons. So it has to have this unique aspect of like interaction. And we do this a lot, right? Particularly in our community engagement. So with that, there's definitely this unique element of interactivity, again, on entertainment. So anyone that's in our community, these members know whenever they're getting something, whatever it is that they're about to open, it's not going to be stale, it'll be fun and interactive, and it's not going to have something to do with just data collection.
Love it. Next slide, please, Vanna. All right, so so that kind of ties us into this idea of optimizing the survey experience, not bombarding with demo questions right off the bat. That is off-putting. What's lovely is in a community setting, you have the opportunity to have profile variables. I'm super proud of the profile variable system that we've built on the Rival platform. But regardless of what platform you're using, the ability to sort of ask those questions and know those answers already helps to keep your activities short and relevant. And we already talked a little bit about not asking people to log into a portal or download a mobile app, keeping it really easy. And I mean, Francesca, we were talking earlier this morning about, what profiles bring us that is appropriate to Gen Zs, and maybe you can comment on that.
Definitely. So I don't think that anyone likes being asked the same demo questions over and over again at the beginning of each chat, because it's annoying. Right. And it's also, taking that, I would feel, like 100% whoever wrote this does not care. I don't feel like I'm being listened to. But when we bring in profile variables, this really, really is such a wonderful thing to leverage, because we don't need to ask someone that information if we already have it. We collect it once and then we're able to, pipe it back in again. So instead of constantly asking, what's your name? Who am I talking to? We can put that in. So the chat will start with their name, or it'll incorporate it. And that's so appreciated because it feels really tailored to the individual, like it's more personal. And then this kind of solidifies the notion that I'm having a conversation, I'm in conversation with someone else. And we're consistently building that relationship with the brand, because I'm seeing my name on the screen, and that kind of detail is what I'd expect as a Gen Z. Like, my generation doesn't want a one size fits all. We want something more bespoke. We want something that feels like tailored and made with care.
And if you think about your relationships you have with like people that you care about, whether you're texting with them or you're talking to them in person, usually you're picking up where you left off. There's some memory of, hey, last time I talked to you, you weren't doing well, or this is where things were at, or maybe we asked you a question and this is how you responded. So that linkage, I think, is part of this humanizing opportunity that we have. The other point I just want to make on the mobile app thing is there may be people on this call that have invested a great deal in a fantastic consumer facing mobile app. Our strategy is to say, great, well, let's put our chats inside your mobile app. Let's deliver the whole experience through your mobile app if that's something that you want to do, versus this idea of having a market research app sitting on someone's phone. I personally don't know why anyone would want to have a mobile app on your phone, unless obviously it's about making money and just the extrinsic motivation. So I will move us along here.
I think this is particularly appropriate for today. The sort of notion of, being considerate of your voice and tone, being friendly and authentic. I mean, we love this sort of, how are you feeling, fellow kids? Sometimes I feel that way. And that, that's part of why this combination of, I've been doing this for a really long time, so I'm here to sort of give you my experienced view on this particular topic. But I feel like it's inauthentic if I don't bring somebody like Francesca to the table to be able to sort of round that out. And so we have a great, I will say, I was thinking about this morning, I do think that we have a great group of Gen Zs who work for us, either who are sort of post college or university, who are sort of starting out their careers. They're very smart and bright. They really are buying into, we find when we're recruiting, they're really buying into this idea of the fact that we're doing research in a different way because it speaks to them and their generation. And so the opportunity to have somebody who is Gen Z in your life take a look at your studies before you deploy them, really helps us not sort of feel like we're trying too hard, because that's sniffed out in a minute, right, Francesca?
Yeah, for sure. I think that a lot of times there's this idea that if you mimic, the Gen Z lingo and you kind of slap it in a survey, you'd expect us to buy into it, but it's really, really inauthentic and it's off-putting. And something that I do kind of love about my generation is we're kind of like, I've said this before, we're kind of like bloodhounds a little bit. I hate to say it, but we can smell inauthenticity like a mile away. Seriously, it is wildly easy to tell when someone is moonlighting as a Gen Z, and like we can clock it so hard. But you really can't, to Jen's point, you really can't replicate the tone and the nuance of a generation's lived experience, right? So it's really, really hard to kind of integrate that like lived experience and that perspective into research. We have to kind of do the work, which means letting Gen Z researchers be a part of that process and a part of that conversation. And thankfully our organization, I think, is fantastic. It's really dedicated to doing that work. We are constantly marrying this like fresh generational perspective with, again, industry veterans and all of their experience. And that really lets us ask the important research questions, but in an authentic tone that reaches Gen Z audiences.
Absolutely. And I think it's about not talking down to a generation either. I mean,
sure.
This is a generation that has their eyes wide open of the reality of the world, are concerned about things. I mean, never have we had more access to media and interconnectivity. So it's not about just being, I did show you that like the sort of irreverent gaming example, which was really appropriate in that sort of space, but that wouldn't be appropriate if you were a different kind of brand. And so being able to sort of find the balance between those two things where it still feels fun and authentic and transparent without pandering, I guess, at the end of the day.
One trend that I've seen a little bit, I was talking to someone last week in the beverage alcohol space, and it was a CMO, and he said, I'm actually now making everyone take our survey. Everyone on my team has to take them, and specifically the younger people on it. So it's like, if you want to go and ask a 20-minute survey and have everything in the kitchen sink, why don't you go have your people do it? And then you can get a sense of like, how realistic am I being about what I'm asking people to do? So that's something I hope that we'll see more and more, which just shows that people are really starting to care more about quality in that experience.
Cool. Thanks, Andrew. Here's an example of how we showed an example earlier of Paramount. It was a little bit of an older video, so it was still Viacom. Paramount's gone through a few changes of late, of how that same Culture Keepers community during the 2020 election they were trying to sort of get at how Gen Zs were feeling about election coverage, And so instead of just asking sort of a traditional, I feel good about it, I feel bad about it, I feel, strongly agree, somewhat agree, the sort of standard scaling of questions, they actually went a different route, and you can actually just read it here. So this idea of, if following the election coverage was like taking a trip, which trip would you take? Which reminds you most of the 2020 election? And they're pulling in, some different things. And what was great about asking it this way was the opportunity to sort of ask the why question that follows. I mean, it's a little bit like image elicitation, which is obviously a great tool, a tool that works super well in mobile. But where we're using this sort of idea elicitation. So if somebody says a trip to the dentist, you can sort of follow that up with why. And the quality of response that we got was very deep. It was more than just like, it's annoying, or I'm really loving it, or I can't wait. It really got into sort of much closer to the heart of what was going on, which was important to sort of understand how the election coverage was impacting this particular generation. Andrew? And then the last piece is what makes something conversational is also this ability to create this back and forth. Andrew talked about sort of leave return, but even with within the context of a specific study, not just being like asking one question after the next, after the next, after the next. It's providing some feedback, some color, making it visually interesting, making it feel like real conversation. This is just a little call out of what our authoring looks like in our platform. So the idea that in the middle are sort of question cards, the things you would expect, single choice and multi-choice, and all of the things and iterations that you can do within those kinds of studies, the different kinds of questions, the different kinds of open ends that we can ask, the ability to pipe in profile that Francesca was talking about, why that was so important before, but also on the left there, message cards. So this ability to sort of say, if somebody says an experience was great, it's appropriate to maybe respond with really great to hear that. If they think the experience was terrible, to say, man, I'm really extra glad that you're here today because I really need to hear about what made it terrible. Image cards let us show GIFs, it lets us show pictures. And then I've given you already, some good examples of how we've used video. Certainly you could use video just to show an asset. But the ability to use video to form connection. I started with a study. I started with showing you some stats across 20 different communities and how people responded to this idea of how do you like this compared to others. And I want to show you more of a qualitative example. This is a short-term community that we built for TELUS, which is a telecom company in Canada, where they were, for the first time ever, they were promoting, or they were sponsoring, thank you, that's the word I was looking for, they were sponsoring an esports tournament. And they were trying to understand sort of the relationship, the brand impact on that sponsorship, and even just some of the logistics of the tournament themselves. And so we created this short-term community for them that lasted over the course of the tournament itself. And we did that recruitment in Discord. So you can see on the left at the top, we've got, the moderator posting the chat, and people would click on that link, they'd take the chat, they would give their SMS number, they'd be recruited. And then from that point on, each day of the tournament, we were able to sort of easily reach back out to them and ask them follow-up questions about, how did you find the tournament today? And questions about, about TELUS and their sponsorship. We were expecting that to go well, and it did. What we weren't expecting was all of this unaided feedback that we got over the course of the moments after we had launched the chat link. And you can see them, I'm sure you've read them as I've been talking. But I really like to ask the question, like, when was the last time someone unsolicited had told you that a survey was cool, it was fun, they loved it? I mean, those aren't words that are used in our industry very often to describe the survey experience. But when you do this right, you really can get that kind of response. And if you want someone to come back and do another survey, which is really the game that communities are playing, it is an iterative exercise. The very best thing that you can do from an engagement perspective, more important than incentives, more important than sharebacks, more important than building trust and authenticity, is making the actual survey experience itself something that is fun and enjoyable and not tedious. And we see that over and over again. I get the pleasure of seeing respondents regularly tell me that they found the survey experience fun.
And the inverse of that, I think, has really big implications, especially if it's a branded experience. If this was a horrible experience, well, now this is starting to bleed into my experience and how I feel about that brand, not just the survey itself. So I do think it's something that you got to put some weight behind. Jennifer, we've got about 3 minutes until we're out of time.
I got 2 slides, so we're pretty much there. And when you do all of this right, the quality of response that you get is really great. We've just launched a brand. Ooh, Jennifer, what is the name of it? It's not a brand, it's a brand perception index. It's a brand power index. That's what it is. A brand power index, where we've done this really big study looking into how Gen Zs connect with different brands and how they rate different brands. I'm going to give you a link if you want to go and check out that particular brand index in one slide. But I did want to sort of show how we kind of get at more than just sort of yes, no, thumbs up, thumbs down. We kind of can get that sort of layer that's going on beneath. Why do you love Target? Well, it has everything I need. I can get groceries, I can get all of these things, but it's also super fun to walk around and find deals while drinking some delicious coffee. I mean, if that's not a Gen Z comment, I don't know what is. And it does then start to give you these ideas, if you're a marketer, ideas about sort of how people are interacting, how Gen Zs are interacting with your brands that are maybe surprising. Andrew, do you want to just play a couple of seconds of that video? So, or not.
This video right here, yeah.
So YouTube is a platform that you can upload videos and see videos, and you can follow your favorite content creators, kind of like if you're into fashion, sports, and I have somebody for literally everything. And then you can upload your own videos. Let's say if you wanted to show somebody how you're doing a DIY video or something like that. But I really like YouTube because you can literally just scroll on there all day. There's always going to be something new popping out, not just the same one.
Love YouTube's ability to share videos and watch videos instantly, and the community that comes behind it.
I'm going to talk about YouTube. I'm going to talk about
I will say YouTube, definitely the brand that Gen Zs love the most of the ones that we tested. So there you go. There's the QR code again. So I encourage you very much, if you haven't had a chance to take a look at an example chat. I think it really brings all of the things that we've talked about together. You get some ideas from there, engaging your Gen Zs where they are, really understanding this notion of trust and transparency, authenticity, and why they're important. And thinking about how you make something feel like an ongoing conversation are the 3 takeaways on the day. And there, Calvin has put into the link or into the chat, the link to the brand power index, and you can go and have a look at that yourself if you would like.
So we did get a couple of questions, so I'll go ahead and just throw those questions out. There's a great question here around, hiring. If I want to hire Gen Zs in my market research team, what skills should I prioritize? And then I think the same kind of question asked a different way is like, what are the tips if you're a Gen Z and you want to enter our insights industry? Francesca, this seems like this is geared towards you.
Absolutely. So for hiring, first of all, what a great question. Thanks for whoever asked. But for hiring, I would say something that's really important is look for look for researchers in places outside of marketing. So I got my degree in sociology. There's a lot of people in psychology and sometimes even anthropology that have really strong backgrounds in research. I only had a minor in marketing, but I had a research fellowship in undergrad. And so I was constantly like in the methodologies, in the process, and I was in the data, I was doing it. And so that's been really, really helpful. And this isn't to say that we shouldn't, be looking in business schools. No, absolutely we should. But I just think that there's such a wealth of knowledge that's sometimes underlooked or overlooked, maybe I should say. But for tips for Gen Z people that are looking to get into the the industry, this is going to sound really idealistic, so apologies in advance, but I would say honestly follow the research topics that you're interested in. So like my research fellowship was on mechanisms for community building in cyberspace. And now I work for a company that does a lot of, community building in cyberspace, right?
I love it.
So
Perfect.
I would say if you like food, for example, look at maybe an organization that's focused on food research. Along those lines, hopefully that's kind of what I would say. That's the advice I would give. I hope that helps.
No, that's great. And I'm going to ask two at once to Jennifer, just because I know we're at the end of time here. So one is, how often should you engage Gen Zs in your community? And the second follow-on question is, when it comes to incentives, what works best for Gen Zs?
So engagement to me is at least twice in a month. I think maybe 3 times is okay. 4 times starts to feel like you're pushing it. You want to be top of mind enough that this is a truly ongoing conversation, but you don't want to be you don't want to be the needy neighbor that's constantly ringing the doorbell. There's a difference between studies that are just popping up on your phone out of the blue. I think for those ones, that's where that timing is important. But I think there's the opportunity to sort of say like, hey, Francesca, I need to do a deep dive into a particular topic. Is it okay if, would you mind if I, sent you a study every day next week? And then when you're expecting it, then you absolutely can, contact people more often. So it's that sort of natural, comes back to those sort of natural conversational elements. You get a little bit of consent and you're good to go. And then in terms of incentives, I mean, I think sort of a variety, we use a lot of sweepstakes, a variety of prizes, work really well, cash money, Visa gift cards, Amazon gift cards, though be aware of Amazon. Sometimes there's definitely some Gen Zs that are, more interested in thrifting and reusing. So having that sort of variety that doesn't sort of create self-selection among the community is important. And closing the loop on whatever incentives you're using is key. But we are definitely out of time. We are in fact 3 minutes over. So anyone that's still here, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. And we look forward to continuing the conversation with you all.
Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. Have a great day.